Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Advancing Consciousness Podcast. Today, we're looking at episode 7, Moving Through Our Inverted World. What does that actually mean, inverted world? I didn't realize that we were in an inverted world. So stay tuned as we explore and discover that much more clearly. So welcome. Let's play today. Let's play with this moving through our inverted world. What does that actually mean? Well, how many of us have noticed, and probably notice more now than before, that things kind of work backwards? What is really kind of the true operating system or our true nature or even our true way of experiencing life is kind of made to look false or look like it's not acceptable or that it is so far-fetched that it isn't even part of our experience. Meanwhile, here we are playing in an environment, in a game, and adopting ideas that are completely opposite to not only our true nature, but our true purpose of being here and how we have come to play and what it is all about, being human. And when we're talking about human, is it really what we are experiencing true human nature? Is it really our true design? Was it even our true intention? So let's go even further than that and look at everything that's existing right now. Let's take a look at every single system that exists that is what we call a societal concept or belief system, or that is how it is. Now, many of us have adopted the idea that human nature is a particular way. They can be violent, they can be greedy, they can, cause harm, and that the fact that they can't be trusted or that, it's always about themselves and so forth. And many people have made so many references that that is our human nature. But is it? Is it really our human nature? Have you actually tapped into that? When I really observed over the years, I've noticed that our human nature is really not quite that way. It's not competitive. It's not, destroying one another. Our true human nature has this deep realization that we are all one. That we have a deeper realization that we have come here to play together. We have a deeper realization that in one way or another, that what we've been experiencing and adopted as a way of life is not really our design. In fact, we have been playing quite opposite that. So if you look at all our systems that are in place right now, and when I talk about systems, we're talking about educational system, we're talking about the media systems, we're talking about the governmental systems, we're talking about the health systems and so forth. And there are many other systems that we have adopted as a way of life and that is necessary, have actually operated in complete reverse. So let's take education, for example. What are we being taught? We're being taught in very powerful ways that life is a certain way. Is it really our nature? Is it actually true? Are we actually being shown what really is, or what really is taking place, or what is a true functionality of our true nature? Or are we being convinced, programmed, conditioned to accept a certain reality, to accept a certain way of acceptance of being this is the right way to operate? It's interesting how it's uncomfortable for many children and even the grown adults that somehow there's that intuitive part of them that's saying, this doesn't make any sense, but this is what is expected of me if I'm going to get a piece of paper or some credentials of some sort to say that I've succeeded in completing my courses or whatever it is. But there's more and more of that conflict within because it doesn't make any sense. And a lot that is being taught is not the newest discovery. It is the discovery that some parts of ourselves, and when I say ourselves, other aspects of ourselves, have agreed to support a certain mandate or direction where you only get to know what we think you should know. And so, not only that, the educational system maintains or teaches us to become similar to every other aspect of ourselves and to repeat a program. So, our individuality, is it being squashed, reduced in some way? Is it really being expressed? Are we bringing forth our highest learning, our highest capacities of really expressing in ways that is bringing an advancement of humanity or not? In many cases, it starts off that way. As little children, as we come along, we are here to play, we are to experience, we are excited, we want to share, we want to use our imagination, we are creativity. But that starts to change very quickly because then, as well meaning parents and also extended family and so forth start to train us, condition us to what they've adopted as a way of life. And then a lot of that imagination, that creativity starts to dim, starts to reduce, and it becomes less and less utilized in its fullest potential. And now the creativity imagination is now being conditioned to see it a particular way rather than its natural way in its unique expressions. Now, the educational system abides to train you, condition you to work in all the other systems. So it reinforces the systems that exist. Now, let's go even further. Let's take a look at some other systems. Are the systems around us actually operating for our highest good? Or in one way or another, it's creating or projecting some form of narrative that is quite opposite to our true nature. Now, if you take the medical system, for example, the medical system has a certain specific focus. The focus is, yes, maybe address certain symptoms, but not really to look at the core of what's happening or how we can actually utilize it so that we do not support a certain way of the body functionality. A lot of people say that we get ill and that we somehow, require medication or certain types of intervention to minimize those experiences for ourselves symptomatically. But is it actually looking at the core of what is there? Because there's so many new advancements that are occurring all the time from well-meaning people that kind of have broken out of the boxes and through their training and started to look at other options. And sometimes that is referred to as alternative, but in many cases, it's really referring to looking at a deeper way of looking at how we actually function and what can help restore. But not only the restoration, but actually what can be shifted so that we are not promoting it within ourselves. And that can relate to diet, that can relate to certain exposures and electrical pulses, EMF and all types of things, but also how we feel about ourselves and so forth. Because if we really look at it, when we start to present that, it is being skewed in a huge way. So only a certain mainstream format, our platform is said this is acceptable, but the other stuff isn't acceptable. So now you're looking at more inversion of that. Because, we are designed through and through physically to be able to navigate and to adjust to whatever we are exposed to. But are we being exposed to something that is very unnatural and then exposed to certain treatments that actually throw us off kilter even further? So you look at it, is health, or what we perceive health procedure, really working for our highest good, or is it guided, directed, and streamed through a certain particular narrative that is kind of quite opposite of what is the truth? Now, if we look at other systems, our foods, and all the other things that we're exposed to, are we actually looking at what is highly aligned and beneficial for us? Or is it again in reverse? So we're looking at our educational system, we're looking at our medical system, we're looking at our governmental system. I mean, any form of government, first of all, I mean, the versions that we have are quite skewed in what government really intended to mean. Because when we look at the government, what is it? It's a group of people that are wholehearted looking after our best interest. Well, that's what it's designed for. As a representative of us, where it creates harmony, balance, equality, and also to work in ways to utilize whatever is being presented to put it into place so that it advances humanity. And that is quite different than the role that they have taken on. They have taken on certain narratives that are telling you what to do and put out laws without actually giving us the opportunity to agree or not in how things are rolled out. And you also see that the people that take on those roles are not doing not only their job, but at the same time, they're actually reinforcing those particular narratives. So the government is not working in advancing humanity, it's actually dwarfing it and, perpetuating that inversion. And if you look at all the other systems that are in place, you will see that everything works in reverse, including law and so forth. It's not about equality, balance, or anything of that nature. It's about manipulation or whatever. But then let's take a look at even further and to say, okay, is our world actually operating in its true state? Well, that is something in question too, because you see everything working in reverse in that arena also. Because what's happening, we got onto the idea that we can't trust one another, that in one way or another that we're violent and so forth. Are we truly that, or are we programmed and conditioned to do so? Why would they actually need an ego to be stimulated in one way or another? Also, what we are exposed to the media and so forth. Now we're talking about the news media, we're talking about the movie world, we're talking about the music world, the TV, and whatever else. Is it showing our true nature, or is a version of that? Now, when we're looking back at the world itself, is what we have adopted as a way of life truly the way of life? Because here we are, we're promoting this fear, judgment, anger towards each other, and the fact that we're conditioning what is acceptable and not acceptable, and we use that as a way to judge ourselves. And our form of uniqueness kind of gets thrown out the window, sort of thing, because that uniqueness is not really being expressed in its true, genuine state. I mean, we have to look at all the other operating systems that exist within ourselves, that we have established within our own operating system, and our own belief systems and our own default programs and so forth. Now, when we question ourselves, are we really competitive? Well, we have a form of that, and it's not really competing with one another. It's about seeing how we can achieve a higher level of our own capabilities. However, using competition in, say, the marketplace, the competition in the arena of one another, say in sports or anything of that nature, or even in any way of creating businesses and so forth, but also competing with one another in day-to-day activities, where we're trying to supersede somebody else or try to be better or minimize somebody else or something like that, or experiencing the opposite from ourselves. Is that really our true nature? When we really look at it, what is our true nature around that? From what I've observed and what I see in my own operating system, which many of you have that within yourself, because everybody to some degree has that active, it's really about collaborating, about cooperating, and in fact, shifting away from competitiveness, shifting away from hoarding and controlling and creating certain restrictions to one another, It's about working together. Now imagine many people coming together, using their highest skills, their highest observation with no restrictions, sharing with one another, looking at that. So basically, we're going into collaboration, going cooperation, and saying, okay, let's design not only services, systems, products, or ways that in one way or another supports us, that creates an environment that is harmonious, that is balanced, that creates equality. So the whole idea of creating lack, which is not true because that is inverted, creating, oh, there's a lack. We're on a planet here, there is no lack. We can create the idea there is, restriction in money, restriction in resources. Well, again, are we using the resources in the most effective way? First of all, do we need to use certain resources, or have we grown out of it? Are we actually using advanced technologies or not? Well, most of that says no, because we have created this idea that there's scarcity, there's lack, and the fact that, there's not equality in any way, shape, or form with all the playmates that we choose to play with. That changes things in a big way. So that's actually working in reverse very powerfully. So as you look at it, now, even the information that is being shared or dwarfed at this point in time, is it taking in consideration really what we want to experience ourselves in an advanced way? Or is it actually producing something of restriction? So why would we need, in a way of saying, we need to be trained, conditioned, programmed to play the game of life? Is that actually natural? Is that a requirement? Or is that an inverted idea? Very much so, it's an inverted idea. Because we didn't come here to be trained, conditioned, programmed, and patternized. We didn't come here to be the same. We didn't come here to drop all our capabilities and then hone it down to an inverted idea of what that is. We came here to be a unique expression. And those unique expressions, when in collaboration and cooperation, really advances the human experience in very powerful ways. Gives us the opportunity really to access greater levels of potentiality. And at the same time, to continue to advance. Because as much as we think we have advanced, we have not. We have to a small degree, and we are now experiencing it much more powerful in the remembrance process that we're going through. But the majority of our experience and energy has not been advanced. Even when we look at technologies, have we actually advanced? Yes, we have utilized some technical advancements, but have we truly utilized it in ways that actually truly support the human experience and support our planetary experience? Or is it being used to keep us more dumbed down, or in fact restrict us in one way or another? The fact that we can't trust one another, that has to be conditioned and programmed and reinforced, because realistically, when in our natural state, we not go into the trust thing, we recognize each other in powerful ways and really accept and welcome each other as this uniqueness that complements our journey. So the thing is, this inverted world that we're looking at, to go even further to understand it, we have been going through a process which a lot of people have referred to as going from 3D to 5D. First of all, what does that mean? 3D to 5D. Well, third dimensional consciousness to fifth dimensional consciousness. As much as that is truly happening, is it truly happening the way we may have imagined or are sharing with one another? Demonizing 3D and seeing the answer is in 5D. Well, of course, each level of dimensional consciousness you apply really changes not only our human experience, but also changes our planetary experience, and our platform. But are we truly, or have we been truly, shifting from 3D to 5D? Well, let me share something with you. We, in fact, when we established ourselves as humans in the original design 15,000 years ago, for a full 5,000 years ago, we actually came in as organic 3D, natural 3D. Now, that had consciousness in it. It had the capacity to expand in a very powerful way. It had a lot of potentialities that, can do some amazing experiences. So we started off in organic 3D with the capacity to go to 4D, 5D, 6D, 7D, 8D, 9D. That was one of the uniqueness, not only of our own personal makeup, but also the layout of the planet. It had all those frequencies available to kick in as we accessed those levels of consciousness. Now, you could have started off in organic 3D and still expressed organic 5D. Eventually, when the collective got to organic 5D, then, of course, the planet would shift accordingly, not requiring to harness or support the frequencies of the organic 3D or 4D at that point in time. So what's happening? We are going through a reversal process. However, before we understand that right now in more clarity, so what happened about 5,000 years into our journey, this inverted part of operating system was introduced as an opportunity to create more challenge and to also create the opportunity for us to be able to, in one way or another, to experience what we call challenges, and within that challenge possibly have the opportunity to achieve things that we weren't able to achieve through that resistance. That was the idea. So when it was introduced 5,000 years later, which would have been 10,000 years ago, what the introduction included was an inverted matrix. Now, every planet has an organic matrix that is online and continues to upgrade as it's connected to all the matrices within our, not only our solar system, our galaxy, but also in certain levels of the universe. So that was not disconnected per se, but an imposed inverted matrix was applied. What does that inverted matrix do? Shows everything in reverse. Every part of it was showing in reverse. What is true was shown as false. What was false was shown as true. And this is how all of these systems were able to put into place. But it didn't stop there. The inverted matrix was applied, and of course the moon was brought in as a satellite to project that inverted matrix because it was closed loop. It wasn't being exposed. Then what occurred is that to maintain humanity to be able to express itself in this inverted matrix, inverted world, there was many modifications that occurred. I'm not going to go into the details of the modification because I'm going to talk about it in another episode. However, what we are looking at is that we went into everything working in reverse. And not only that, we also disconnected many of our accessibility. So part of the disconnection was to the streaming from all of our DNAs, which each and every one represented a higher consciousness from a different contributor species that was connected with us and would, as they continue to upgrade, we would upgrade. And as we continue to upgrade with all the other blends in there, it would assist them also. So a lot of that got turned off. About 10 of them got turned off, almost 99%, and only 2 were remained, but reduced tremendously and filtered, running through a screening process. However, humanity had already 5,000 years of engrounding within itself and still had a capability to access different levels of consciousness. So it felt that in one way or another, it would still be able to advance. So that's when the artificial intelligence got plugged in, which is a software called the ego. And the ego's design was to support this inverted matrix, inverted world, and to stimulate us to play the inverted game. So what we did is we went from organic 3D, we went into what we call the inverted 3D. So utilizing part of the 3D design and operating system, but made it work in reverse. So that's what we've been playing with for the last 10,000 years, is in the inverted 3D. And then it went further to go into 2D, which was a total disconnect to any other form of aspects of self, and seeing yourself as only this individualized physical body with very minimized access to consciousness at that point, so that we could play this inverted game in a complete unconscious state. So that's what we've done. Now, of course, we started activating changes back in 1987, then back into the end of 2012, going into 2013, and now we've accentuated even further into 2020. So we're going through a process of removing. Well, the inverted matrix was already removed, and that was put out of equation the end of last year. We also had a reformatting of sorts on the planet. So the planet now supports organic 3D and organic 5D again, giving us the opportunity to purge all the rest of the 2D, inverted 3D, and inverted matrix that is still, pretty well active within our ego system or artificial intelligence, and also reverse that so that we would go into our natural state. So our bodies are going through transformations. Of course, our consciousness has shifted in a very powerful way and are being stimulated in a very powerful way in the restoration back to our world that was the original design, because we have chosen that we're done with the inverted aspect of it. So with that understanding, we're going from our inverted world to our natural world. We're going from our inverted version of humanity or our human experience to our true human experience. And this has been what we've been experiencing, and that has induced some very powerful processes within ourselves and can create some confusion. So what's happening? How do we move through this inverted world? Well, first of all, the realization that it's inverted, that everything is opposite. So therefore, being more attentive to connecting to seeing something more than what we see on the surface. Because right now, as we are shifting in consciousness, we're starting to pay attention to other levels of realism that supersedes what we've adopted as an ideal of realism, and as an idea of as a way of life, and as an idea of what the human experience is all about, or what even human is all about. Because we're much more than that, and we're starting to realize that. So many of you are starting to realize that, yeah, the world works in reverse. Every system is working in reverse. It's not really real, and it's not natural. So this is what we're starting to question. We're starting to look at it more powerfully. We're starting to do more research in the sense of seeing what it truly is. And this is what this podcast is about, to share more of that, to stimulate it within yourself in conjunction to the waves of energies and the consciousness that you're receiving, the streaming that you're receiving. All of it is stimulating so that you have, because that blueprint, that operating system exists in you. It's not been turned off. It has been overridden for a long period of time, so we didn't have really that much access, but that access is stimulating. And part of the reversing process is now we're purging what we've adopted as a way of life on so many levels, physically, through the human entity, through the soul, through the mind, and also all the systems that are coming into play right now. And that is changing us in a very powerful way, and it's changing the playground, it's changing how our body functions, and really bringing a truer version of our human capacities, capabilities, and our human experience. So when you hear the idea this is human nature to be angry, to be competitive or greedy or anything of that nature, or the fact that they have to be emotionally driven or anything of that nature, then that is just the reversal program that was applied at this point, because it's not really our true nature. Like I said, our true nature is collaboration, playfulness, light, self-expression, and uniqueness at the same time. We came here to be unique, but to also work with each other. We never came here to be the same. And the original design basically allowed that the planet would support us and everything that we would set up would support us so that we can be unique. We're not enslaved, that we're buying in the idea that we need to go work, that we have to earn our living, earn our way of life, uh, or that we have to sacrifice, that we need to some way suffer or anything of that nature. That was never, ever, ever our design, and we're realizing that more fully now. We can create all types of systems that is allows us not only to flourish but to be supported according to all the directions and choices that we make in our life so that we can remain in uniqueness. Yes, of course, we're going to, some of us are, and many of us may choose to play different roles with that uniqueness to advance, say, technologies, to advance certain things while we're going through the transition or making obsolete what we don't no longer need, and designing it completely new in a holistic way where it encompasses all of it. Because in our holistic way, we will not have haves and have-nots. That does not exist in our true fashion. We wouldn't have certain parts of the world going into starvation or anything of that nature. That only was introduced and brought in and supported for all this period of time because, oh yeah, this is the way we need to play the game. But that's reversing too. That is a reversal process. Now, if we look at it from a higher state of consciousness, you look at it and say, well, we're not doing so well in playing out our game of life if, we still have the haves and have-nots and suffering and starvation and stuff like that. I mean, there's a lot of parts to that which we can dissect and so forth, but we're not going to go into that. So how do we maneuver through all of this? Yes, we're going to observe and see the world is upside down, and we are putting it in its natural state, and it's going to take a bit of a progress. But at the same time, we have to realize we have an ego that actually still promotes, very much so, that inverted world. But we have to also look at what is our experience made up of? From the moment you were born till now, what is our experience made up of? Our experience, were they in a natural state, or were they all created and experienced in that inverted world, inverted 3D, inverted 2D, inverted matrix world? Where's our beliefs, our stories? Is it really true? Or was it all created and experienced through this inversion? And this is what we're doing right now. This is why we're going through a purging process, because all of that is in reference of our inverted world, our inverted human experience, and so forth. Because if we look at it, you look at even religion, for example, they teach a lot of different concepts and ideas, but it still promotes separation and so forth. Is it true? Is there some higher order dictator? Is there, hierarchy or anything of that nature? Or is there? Well, as we tune in to ourselves and we see more of our true essence, we realize that we are those sourceness. We are those so-called existence because we're not outside of it in any way, shape, or form. So they promote the fact that, hey, you're not much and you have to earn your way or that whatever. So when we're looking at that and say, okay, what is the truth about that? What do I feel within ourselves? And then that starts to shift because many of you have dropped certain ideas, concepts, and belief systems that we have adopted as a way of life and plugged it in as part of our experience and so forth. So here we are. We're going through this purging process. So what are we purging? We're purging our stories, our programs, our belief systems, all created within that inversion. We're letting go also within ourselves the labels that we applied on ourselves based on those experiences, our definitions of ourselves based on those experiences. We're also letting go and shifting away from the ego's idea of how life is that promotes, again, the inverted. We're also noticing a destabilization of the systems that still support that inversion, because you have to look at it. Every single system that exists right now was all created, supported for many, many, many years in that inversion. It's not operating in its true design. It's not operating in a way that actually supports us any longer. No, yeah, we all chose. There's no right or wrong, good or bad, to play the game. We knew what we came up to play with here. But at the same time, guess what? We're shifting all of that to bring that natural state back in alignment. And that's what we are doing. So, how do we navigate? We navigate with ease, bringing, allowing our highest aspects of ourselves to be more and more part of our journey. We purge more and more of all of our stories, programs, belief systems, labels, and so forth, and definitions that of anything that you've experienced this moment. And then living in the moment, in the most current moment. Now, not taking anything that is being shared as absolute truth until you run it through your own discretion, when you run it through your own tapping into yourself, your own knowing to see if it actually is what is being shared as is. This is kind of how I saw it. Okay, so I came here on the planet, had a certain level of consciousness and so forth, had gone through the game of life, got lost to a certain degree through it, maybe not fully, but a good chunk of it for a long period of time to understand the human experience. But then, as I started to access more and more of my consciousness, I started to realize more and more that the fact of what we were being told and how things are being played out in all the systems were not actually natural in any way, shape, or form. It was not our true design and was not reflecting our capacities and capabilities. So then I started to not only question, but I started to really look at what actually resonated with me or not. And I noticed that a lot that was in the mainstream on all forms of all the systems was not natural, did not resonate, and started for me to access more of that consciousness so that we can create more of alignment in that resonance. And this is kind of what happens to all of us. And this is what we are doing at this point in time. So as we're navigating through this, we have to be okay to let go of anything we've adopted, not only from ourselves, but also adopted as a way of life in the systems that exist, and also others, how we play with each other and so forth, and really going into alignment and also seeing that we are here to collaborate, we are here to share and to be ourselves. And this is the thing, the biggest calling that we have within ourselves is being truly our authentic self. And that will help us navigate with much more ease this journey that we are on at this time. So that's how we navigate. So how do we move in our inverted world? With our truer and truer essence of ourself. That's how we move through it. We're no longer dependent on the outside screen, the outside world, the outside reality. And as much as nothing is outside, really, but to us it seems that way. That we are using that less and less of that as a reference point, and we're using ourselves as a reference point. So that creates a very powerful modification and upgrading and so forth within yourself. What we're going through right now is, as we laid out two platforms, we have now a platform called Organic 3D and Organic 5D that was introduced last year in the July-August time. And we are either in 3D or 5D platform. And both are quite advanced from the point that we were in, which was that whole inversion part, the inverted 3D, 2D part of it. So a larger chunk of people have decided to play in the organic 3D for a period of time with the option to go into 5D at any point in time along the way as they feel ready for it. And then a smaller group have chosen to participate and use a home base as organic 5D. And that is kind of what is being played out right now, with the opportunity for us to complete the purging of those versions of ourselves that we've adopted as a way of life, and all the systems accordingly. So yeah, it's going to seem a little bit unrest within ourselves, and also what is playing out on the big screen around us in what we call the world, and the different levels of realities that we have, and clusters of realities that we have within our family dynamics and our work environment and our social environment and so forth. Of course, we're going to feel more compelled to connect with like-minded people that support where we're at this point in time, so that we stimulate each other. Content of this nature is there to kind of help stimulate and join the dots sort of thing and bring a little more clarity. But really, that clarity is just activating the clarity you already have within yourself. So now that you understand how our world is in reverse and it's actually purging that, and all that we've adopted as a way of life is going through that purging process, it makes things more exciting to see life the way it's unfolding, what we're doing, and so forth. But also see when we see the world actually breaking down at the seams, it's only just allowing that older inverted version of that world or systems to collapse and for us to work towards collaboratively to create a new way of life. Now, of course, it's going to be transitional because we're not ready to jump from one to the other fully. But as we are modifying the systems, upgrading the systems, and eventually they become obsolete. Now, many of the systems are already obsolete, but a lot of us are going to be applying modification and upgrade to it so that we can still use a portion of it for a period of time in its upgraded version, and then go to the point of creating completely something new and do the transitional part where that obsolescence is completed. We're going into some very powerful times. We have for quite some time. Of course, we're in phase 3. We're also activating another component of it in December 21st, which will launch things even further, allowing more of the 2D inverted 3D and polarization, because that's not our natural state either, to clip off the extremes of those polarizations so that it does not continue to drive us as powerfully as they are now. And of course, we're going to experience that for several months going into all the way to about the end of March. Could end a little sooner, but right now it's not looking as, possible, even though the probability is there. But going into April, where we're going into another stage within the same phase or the stage that we are, and that will make things even much more at ease. But right now, we are being pushed to the max, energetically and otherwise, to purge those older versions, that inverted world that we've experienced, the inverted matrix that still remains within you, and all the creations within that inverted matrix and inverted 3D, 2D, out of ourselves so that we actually are most current. Because even the codes that are coming in are upgrading us, but many of us are not using very much of it because of the fact that we're still so heavily ingrained and dependent and using as a reference point that inverted world that we've played up to this point in time. Yes, and of course there's the inverted idea that, if we shift away, then we'll lose connections. Well, if your connections are going to hold you in that old inverted world, then maybe those connections are not as valuable to you as you may think it is. So you may want to create new connections or allow yourself to be open for new connections and then, experience those transitions. That doesn't mean those connections will end permanently. Those connections may come back online. And I've seen that happen in not only in my own life, but many, many, many people's lives, especially with everything that's playing out right now. Questioning is an all-time high. And also further research is within a deeper understanding is an all-time high also. So anyways, that's about all I'm going to share at this point in time. If you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube or anything, please subscribe, like, and share. If you are watching on Vimeo, the same thing. You can follow, share, and like. This is also available on various platforms on audio format, Podbean, Apple, I think Apple Cast, I think it's called, something like that. It's also on quite a few other platforms. So, look us up at that point. Please share it with others. And if you feel like supporting this work that we're doing, in the link of the description, there is a link that you can support us financially in this point in time so that we can spend most of all of our time at this point to create further and further content. Now, we also have available our Advancing Consciousness series, which is a training series that is completely available, of course, supported by anyone that wants to support us at this point in time, but there's no restriction. So that's available on YouTube, Facebook, and Vimeo under Advancing Consciousness series. And this is referred to as Advancing Consciousness Podcast, which we have a channel on YouTube, a channel or a group in Facebook, but it's also on other platforms. Anyway, until next time, go out and have a blast. And thank you for being part of this and everything that you are doing. And we're going to look at some point in time, even further, who we truly are from even the human perspective. Because what we've been experiencing has never been natural for us or hasn't been for the last 10,000 years. And that's what we are changing from. So go out and play.